Hey guys, what is up? Public back with another video, and this time we're not talking about the stuff from stream. But if you missed it, I was streaming on Twitch the other day, going over full overview of the talents. But today is going to be a bit more focused. So this is my first time looking at the talent tree, but I wanted to make sure you guys got my kind of reactions on the talent tree. I'll talk about some problems. In this video, we're going to go over the new priest class tree. Been significantly redesigned since we last looked at it on YouTube. And then in the next video, probably coming out tomorrow or the day after, the full deep dive on the shadow spec tree. There's quite a lot to cover here, and it's definitely not done yet. You can tell there's some stuff that's actually just not yet implemented yet. So there's more stuff to come. So this is going to be kind of a state of the state of where our talent tree is at. Dragonflight is now in beta, so feedback is definitely kind of, that cycle is ramping up as we get closer and closer to launch. So let's go ahead and dive into the priest class tree. Okay, so this is just kind of off the cuff thoughts for most of this. I do have some notes of things I would like to see improved or general feedback we'll get to towards the end. But we're just going to kind of talk about the class tree in this section and kind of what our choices are. So by default, they've changed it now. You now get Shadow Fiend and Shadow or Death as free points in the tree. So as a Shadow Priest, you just get these two for free. Depending on your spec, you'll get something different. I think Shaman also does this. So as Discipline, you get Shadow Fiend and Renew. And then as Holy, you get Renew and Prayer of Mending kind of baseline. So these are kind of where we're starting out in the tree. And I'm going to kind of cover this section by section. So the nice part is, from a DPS perspective, you honestly don't have a whole lot that you, quote, need to pick up. You take Death and Madness if you can get advantage of it. This is a new version of Death and Madness, so it's not necessarily just an AoE thing now. There is some benefit on single target, so we'll probably end up picking it up. Not sure how I feel about the rework in general. I think I'd rather it go back to what it was before. It does kind of read like you'll get infinite Shadow or Deaths and Execute. That's not how it actually plays. You just get one cooldown reset when it fails to kill a target. And that's regardless of targets, so it's a little awkward to use, so I think it's a little bit less fun than it used to be. But regardless, you'll get that extra reset, at least on single target, which is a DPS increase for sure. As far as other things, you'll pick up Throes of Pain, which is largely the same. Your Shadow of Pain does some more damage, and then you get more Insanity when a target with it dies. So still a great pickup for Mythic Plus, and just in general, a little extra 5% damage on Pain. It's not a whole lot, but it is something that you'd want to pick up. And the good news is, this is kind of it in terms of what you need to pick up for damage. We have a lot more free points, as you can tell, before we unlock the next section. So the rest of this is kind of, what kind of utility do you want? There's a little bit of, as we get down to the middle section, we're probably going to want to pick up Vampiric Embrace and Power Infusion. So we want to make sure we pick up at least two of these guys to get down into that section. What I would suggest for a lot of what we're going to end up taking, you have some options here. I think a lot of us are going to want to take Shadow Mend. This is a reworked version of Shadow Mend. It now has a 15-second cooldown, but heals for much more. Definitely a good thing to pick up. And then you can talent right into Body and Soul here. It's no longer a choice node with Angelic Feather, so you can actually get Body and Soul and Angelic Feather. Although, unfortunately, it's harder to get just to Angelic Feather by itself. So I'm guessing there's a possibility they might put that back as a choice node. For me, I'm probably going to end up picking it anyways if it's in this current state. And that way, I have some more stuff unlocked. Now, you can pick up Shackle and Dead here. You could grab Leap of Faith. Your both Dispels are here if you need them. So this is a great kind of off the bat utility depending on what you need for the fight, right? And Leap of Faith is here as well. Good news is, you can also feel, if you want to get some more off healing into your kit, you can pick up Renew and Prayer of Mending as well. The great part about this is it's not quite in beta yet, but all of these holy spells in the tree, they said, are intended to be usable inside of Shadow form. Which is great. So that means if you want a little bit of off healing in your rotation, or it's a really heavy healing part of the fight, you can just weave in Prayer of Mendings, weave in Renews if you'd like. Obviously, that's not something we're going to do on every fight, but the option is there should you want it. And depending on what you need, it's there. You can also talent into either Masochism or Depths of Shadows, which does work a little bit differently now that Shadow Mend is a beefier cooldown, in the sense that it's 15 seconds. So you still get the Masochism DR, so it's a 10% damage reduction every 15 seconds, which is, obviously that's a pretty sizable DR on a low cooldown, so it's something. And then, or you can also pick up Depth of Shadows. So every time Shadow Word Pain deals damage, it just sacks a healing buff of your Shadowman. I believe this was a Torghast power or something like that. So, which is actually up to 50%. That's quite a lot of healing for a Shadowman. So definitely something, if you feel like you're going to be doing more off healing, you can definitely pick that up. I'd say for a lot of scenarios, Masochism is going to be a good default here. A couple other options, you can pick up Mind Control here. I would say you probably only want to do this if there's like a very specific use case of like mind controlling the squirrels in Mechagon Workshop, for example, things like that. You can also pick up Dominant Mind later on if you'd like that. Some other things to note here, if you do kind of go this left side, there is a really interesting option here called Spell Warding that just reduces the magic damage you take by 3%. Obviously, it takes a little bit of points to invest to get over here, but it is, you know, something that could prove useful on heavy magic ticking damage fights. So, is an option as well. I think for a lot of what I want to do, I'm actually going to go with one of these new talents. So there's a choice node between Sheer Terror, which increases the amount of damage required to break your Psychic Stream by 75%. Kind of lame, not super useful. I hope they change that to maybe Mind Bomb or something like that, because the damage threshold's kind of, it feels really low in general. Or you can pick up Void Tendril. So this is a returning CC ability that's slightly changed from Mop, I believe. So you can summon Shadowy Tendrils rooting up to 5 enemy targets within 8 yards for 20 seconds or until the tendril is killed. So a lot of like niche little utility things, you know, what you decide to pick up, you know, totally up to you, and kind of what you need in your build. I think for a lot of us, you know, Shackle Undead, you know, Mind Control, a lot of great options here on the tree. And that's kind of the opening first section. Overall, pretty happy with this. Few points to improve or to swap around, but overall, not bad. Like I mentioned before, you can pick up Dominant Mind here. We're probably almost always going to want to have Vampiric Embrace and Power Infusion. Vampiric Embrace is slightly nerfed to what we have on live, so it's only 50% base as a 2-minute cooldown. Probably more interesting the fact that Holy and Disc cannot pick this up, Disc especially. But at least this does free up more points in our spec tree, which we'll get into in a separate video. But probably still want to pick it up. It is still on the GCD, so hopefully they can remove Vampiric Embrace from the GCD, but there's that. And then again from here, you're probably going to want to pick up Twins of the Sun Priestess. It's just so much damage and utility that a priest brings when they take this. And that leads you right into Twist of Fate. So kind of easy pathing here that makes a lot of sense. In terms of damage, the other thing that we, quote, need to pick here is Improve Mind Blast. So this just reduces the cooldown of Mind Blast here. To get this, you can pick either Void Shield, Sand Lane, or Apathy. So Void Shield is a slightly different version of what the old PvP talent was. So when you cast Power Word Shield on yourself, 30% of the damage you deal refills the Power Word Shield absorb amount. It doesn't refresh the Power Word Shield buff, but it does kind of keep refilling that shield. So this is really good for like if you're taking constant ticking damage, for example, but you're still able to hit the boss or an enemy. This is going to be pretty sweet. Just a note, if you missed it, they did buff in some ways Power Word Shield. So Power Word Shield is no longer spammable, so you can't just cast it on every party member if you want. It has I believe a 7-second cooldown, something like that. But it does absorb quite a lot more than it used to. So it is, I think it's like 12-13% of my max health right now at level 60 on beta. So it's definitely a pretty sizable shield. So it's not like it's going to get, you know, blown off right away. So very interesting Void Shield option here. Of course, you still have Sand Lane if you want to buff Vampiric Embrace. Just to note, it's still buffing it. You know, this Sand Lane is kind of bringing Vampiric Embrace closer to what it is baseline in Shadowlands, but it's still quite worse in general. So not sure how much use this will see, but it's there if you need it. And then Apathy. This is a new talent. Your Mind Blast critical strikes reduce your target's movement speed by 75% for 4 seconds. In general, not a fan of this for PvE scenarios at least. Getting kind of RNG movement speed reduction on your target. I don't know how useful that is, just because you're waiting for a crit on Mind Blast, and we really have no way to guarantee a crit of Mind Blast, meaning the slow is just going to kind of randomly happen on your target. You know, generally speaking, random slows aren't something in PvE that we really care about. If it was more controlled, I could see it being more useful, but yeah, in general, not sure this one would get used very much. Hopefully we get some changes on that. For me personally, probably going to pick up Void Shield and then the 2 improved Mind Blast charges here. And then again, you have more freedom. You can go back up to this top section and pick up other utility that you missed. You can grab Mass Dispel, Improved Mass Dispel. There's a couple of things on the holy side, like far left over here, that you probably don't want. Like, Holy Nova's around here, Holy Nova damage. For 12 seconds after casting shield, you deal 10% additional damage with Smite and Holy Nova. Those kinds of things. A lot of this isn't something that's going to be super useful as a Shadow Priest. But it's available. A lot of these might be have like weird PvP use cases, something like that. But yeah, not something you're kind of enticed as a Shadow Priest to pick up. I think most people, maybe you pick up Dominant Mind. I think a lot of folks are just going to go back up to the top, get some Dispels, right? Get our Dispels Disease back, Leap of Faith back. What else do you want to pick up? Maybe grab Renew as well. And that's kind of how we're filling that out. And then we get into our bottom section of the tree. So we have a couple new stuff in here from the last build. So we still have Mind Games on the tree. They did remove Shadowflame Prism. It's now in the spec tree. We'll talk about that in the next video. You definitely want to pick up Mind Games. It more or less works the same as it does on live. Just a nice big single target nuke. Interesting part, they have 2 extra nodes now that are further buffing Mind Games. The first one is just called Manipulation, which says Mind Blast and Mind Spike will reduce the cooldown of Mind Games by 1 second. It's currently a 2-pointer. I'm assuming that means it's supposed to be 2 seconds for every Mind Blast and Mind Spike. Not quite sure what it's intended to be, but I guess we'll see when it's fully working. So you can pick that up just to get more Mind Games out than you would otherwise. Still pretty huge. And then the last option is Shattered Perceptions. This is basically the conduit that we had from Shadowlands, where Mind Games debuff, the thing that's reversing the damage and healing, lasts an additional 2 seconds, deals more initial damage, and reverses more damage and healing. So overall, just, you got some options, 4 points to buff Mind Games even further. So they're definitely making Mind Games a more core part of our rotation. Generally speaking, I'm okay with it. There's a chance you might drop some of these points in Mythic Plus where you don't, like maybe it's a fortified week, lower Karazhan-esque kind of a dungeon. You don't care as much about single target maybe this week. Could drop some of these points and pick up more utility if your group needs it. Wouldn't be losing that much damage to do that. Otherwise, some other things that we're definitely going to want to have. You get a choice node here between Divine Star or Halo. Very, very cool to see these guys back. In my opinion, just fun thematic options for doing AoE damage. You will have to kind of play around how you use them. They have 30-yard ranges on these, so you do have to be a bit closer to use them, but that's kind of how they work. The nice part is they are both the shadowy versions of the spell, so they are purple for anyone wondering. As far as which one we take when, unsure. I'm guessing for a lot of things Divine Star is going to be the kind of go-to pick for single target, and then Halo for more AoE stuff. But obviously Halo is going to require a bit more skill to use. If you read the tooltip, you can see that it does more damage after it's 25 yards range away on your target. So you kind of have a sweet spot of hitting them between 25 and 30 yards away. So definitely a bit more skill expression there. I think so. I'll just go pop into Divine Star for the moment. And then you kind of have, again, here are your options. So again, left side of the tree kind of doesn't make sense for Shadow Priest. There's not a whole lot here that we really care about. Surge of Light, Holy Word Life, this kind of stuff, might make sense, but you do have to invest quite a lot of points to get down here. So not sure how often that'll make sense. Some other things you can pick up. Desperate Prayer heals you for an additional 5% of your max health, or up to 10%, I'm assuming, with 2 ranks. Yep, over 5 seconds. So if you want more Desperate Prayer healing, you can do that. Crystalline Reflection is still here. Was never the biggest fan of this. Not sure how useful it'll be, especially now that Power Word Shield isn't spammable. But it does give Power Word Shield a small heal when you do cast it on yourself, so it's something. You can also get one of those two to get down to Angelic Bulwark. It's kind of just a crappy cheat death, more or less. When an attack brings you below 30% health, you gain an Absorb Shield equal to 15% of your max health for 20 seconds. But you can only get this every 90 seconds. I think this needs to be buffed severely, especially when you consider Power Word Shield baseline is like 12% of my max health at level 60. So the fact that this proc is only 15% feels pretty weak generally. So hopefully we get some improvements on this. A couple other things to note. You get Void Shift down here. So this is a PvP taunt moving into the main tree. So if you're not familiar with what this is, it's a long cooldown. You basically swap health pools with the current targeted party member. Has some kind of niche use cases, especially if there's a mechanic that someone is getting but you're not, you can life swap them to get their health, or to give them your health, basically. Kind of like a, quote, lay on hands. So it's kind of a mechanic is happening, you're trying to save someone's life type of thing. It does do a small heal, so if your target or you are below 25%, the lowest will go up to that amount. So it is kind of a heal, but it's going to be mostly used for those kind of damage mitigation events, I'd guess. So probably something we'll pick up. To get down there, you do have some fade buffing talents you can get. So translucent image, which was the conduit that we had, now just says fade reduces damage you take by 5%. This lasts for the entire duration of fade, not just the beginning. But they did nerf the actual DR, so it's only 5% now, which is, fairly weak in comparison. I think I'd rather have Masochism as my DR, honestly. So a little sad that they nerfed the DR. I think I'd rather have it in the old state, to be honest. You can also take Phantasm, which activating Fade removes movement impairing effects. So with this, you'd be able to pick this and Dispersion to get out of movement effects. Seems pretty good, depending on the fight, that you could take advantage of it. I think a lot of folks will take Translucent Image, though. And then you can spec into Improve Fade to reduce the cooldown of Fade as well, to get it down to a 20-second cooldown, I believe. And then probably pick up a Void Shift here as well. So there you go. And even after putting in extra points, I still have 2 points left over. Probably going to pick up Mass Dispel, Improve Mass Dispel. Something like this is probably what the build, quote, build is going to look like, especially for kind of like standard single target raid encounter. Obviously, you have kind of a lot of choices here depending on what you need. I'm not taking Prayer of Mending if you want more off healing, or Spell Warning for the spell damage reduction. Maybe you want Void Tendrils, something like that. A lot of options here of kind of what you can take or not. The important thing is there's not a whole lot of throughput in here, so it's not like you're losing out on a whole lot as you pick up utility options, which I think is great. Some throughput, that's okay. Generally speaking, set up pretty well. Okay, so now that I've kind of given an overview of the Priest class tree, I do want to spend a little bit of time here just giving feedback on it. I will end up posting something like this to the forums, but there are a couple points I didn't cover I do want to make a note of. So some ideas of improvement, things like that. So the first thing is, love that Leap of Faith is in here, and you can kind of get an improvement here to reduce its cooldown by 30 seconds. I do wish there was a choice node somewhere in here for Vault of the Heavens, which is basically reverse Leap of Faith, which is you jump to an ally. I would love to see that in here, either as some people have said choice node with Leap of Faith, choice node with Move with Grace, something with a choice node. I think that would be great to see. So hopefully we get something like that in here. Would love it. A couple other things to note. So some things are missing in the tree. So Dispersion is not in the tree, as well as Silence. Those are both in the class tree, the spec tree for Shadow. They are kind of high up, relatively easy to get, but I think I still would rather see them in the class tree, especially in the sense of they do somewhat still cost power since they're inside of our spec tree. We'd rather just see them moved here entirely, especially because I think Disc and Holy would absolutely love an interrupt. Lots of ways they could do that. They could even have some kind of baseline Shadow Word interrupt spell in here that's just like a basic 24-second kick, and then give a talent in the spec tree that's talent that Shadow can talent into that makes it a silence again. So something like that I think would go a long way. Some other things that I would love to see is there are some utility nodes in here, and you probably saw me mention them, that are kind of underwhelming. So nodes like Holy Nova, I think Sheer Terror is kind of meh. Void Tendrils is kind of specific. I think it needs buffed, honestly. Apathy, some things like this, not the biggest fan of. I would rather see some iconic utility spells make a return, like Spectral Guise being in the class tree, Shining Force, maybe even something as crazy like Power Word Barrier would be awesome, or even something new from Shadowlands like Door of Shadows. I think having any of these kind of being put in the class tree, either as extra nodes somewhere around here, or even replacing some of these that feel a little bit more underwhelming, I think would be great. In general, some other things to note, I think getting access to all this movement speed is really nice. In general, love the improvements that they've made to this. I think there's, again, a couple things to stand out, but honestly, looking like a pretty good class tree. I think I'm overall pretty happy with it. Rated somewhere in like the A tier-ish. Certainly there's some improvements that we've already mentioned. Would ideally like some of this kind of bottom left section to be more enticing as a Shadow Priest. Maybe they could buff them, rework them a little bit, or make them kind of easier to obtain, kind of a bit more pathing options around here. But otherwise, honestly, great improvement from what we had before. Let me know what you guys think, what's missing, what's not. I'll remind everyone, if you have feedback, even if you don't have access to beta, post it on the class forums. Like, devs are reading this feedback. That seems very obvious based on the changes that we have seen. So they're definitely looking at it. I'll be posting my own feedback as well. Look for that either pinned in the Discord. I'll probably add it as in the description of this video eventually when that gets posted. But for now, that's all we have for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.